Hello folks, today I'll be talking about GCP File Store. So what is a file store? It's basically a fully managed network attached storage, and it can be used either by a compute engine or by Kubernetes. So at the end, it's just a file storage system and it works exactly like one. So some of the use cases would be that you have an application which is currently not residing in the cloud, and that application uses a file storage system. Then you can migrate that application and you can use the GCP file store as an alternate or as a substitute. It can also be used in data analytics. So for example, you have multiple nodes or multiple compute instance, and all these compute instances want to receive data or want to get data from the same file storage system. Then you could use something like a GCP file store, and it can also be used as a web content management system as well. Currently in GCP, the file storage options are either you can have an HDD or an SSD system. You can also have a high scale SSD system. So if you go through the specs, you can see that the basic HDD has a capacity of 1 to 63 terabytes. However, the IOPS is very less, so it's only around 5000. Whereas if you look at the SSD ones, then the IOPS it's much higher than the HDD one. So it depends on what kind of application you are using. If you're using an application which requires a higher throughput and a higher IOPS, then you would prefer using the SSD ones. However, the cost of using the SSD ones are much higher than the HDD ones. So the overall cost of your application would definitely be higher if you're using SSD. I'll be showing you on how to use the particular file store in GCP. So let's proceed with the demo. So the first thing I will be doing is I will be creating an file store instance. So for that, you can go to your GCP, and under storage you will see file store. You can just click on that and click on instances. So for this demo, I'll be creating an HDD instance because the SSD one is very expensive and it's not needed. So let's just create an instance. So you can just give it a name. The description is optional. And here is where you choose between the basic or the high scale. So the basic has either HDD or SSD. So you can look at the cost. So if you're using a basic HDD, then the cost would be around $204 for a terabyte of data. And similarly, if you're using SSD, you can see the cost increases, but so does the IOPS and the throughput. So for this, I'll be using HDD, and I will just allocate 1 terabyte of data, and the rest I would just leave it as default. You also need to configure the file share name, so I'll just give a random name. So this takes a bit of time to create, so let's just wait for a bit. So once the instance has been created, let's just open this and see. So basically the file share name has been used here. So this would be used while we are mounting our file store in an instance. So I'll just copy this and I'll keep this handy somewhere. So what we'll do after this is we'll create 2 instances and we will mount this particular file store in both those instances. And what we need to see is that once I create a file in one of those instances, the other instance should also be able to access that same file. So for that, I have already created 2 instances. So if you go to the compute instance, I'll just open my compute instance. So as you can see, I've created two instances. So what I'll do first is I'll basically mount that particular file store for both these instances. So for that, I just need to SSH. So these are the commands that I need to run. The first thing I need to do is I need to run the NFS. I need to install the NFS, so I'll just do that. So let me just install this. Similarly, I'll open the second instance and do the same as well. So this already has NFS installed. So I've already installed the NFS. So if in case it isn't, so you just need to run this command so it gets installed. So after you've done that, you just create a directory, and within that directory we will mount the file store system. So I have created this file, and what I need to do now is I need to run this sudo mount command. So I'll run this and I'll get the file store instance. So this is the file store instance. So I'll just copy this. I'll just paste this and I'll paste this path. So the next thing I will do is I'll copy this and I'll run it on the other instance as well. Before that, I need to create the directory. So once I have mounted, what I'll do is I'll just give it permission so that anybody is able to access it. So for that, I will just do a sudo chmod. I'll just give it 777 for the time being. Similarly for the other instance as well. So after I've done this, I will create a file and I will see if the other instance also has access to that same file. So I'll just copy this. I'll go to that path where it has been mounted. And I'll just copy this. Let me just ls this. So there is a test file in my instance 2. So if I go to instance 1 should also have the same test file. So let me just go to instance 1 once. And let me ls. So as you can see that instance 1 also has the same test file. So if I cat this, so it's basically the same file. So in this way, what we have done is we've actually mounted one particular file store in two instances, and I have created a file in one of those instances, and the other instance was also able to access the same file because it was both of them were mounted on the same file system. Hope this was a useful session for you, and if you have any doubts, you can just ping me or mail me. Thank you and have a great day.